move deeper in this precious time of prayer and meditation. So I invite you to take a long, deep breath, inhaling that oxygen way down to your tummy, and then hold it for a moment and release it. And again, another long, deep breath. Hold and release. Release it all. Release whatever's on your mind. Set it all aside and go deeper. Deeper into experiencing your oneness with that extraordinary intelligence that created you and me and everything there is. When you find that place of connection deep within you, relax. Relax in faith, knowing that you are divinely guided. Relax in faith, opening your heart and mind to divine inspiration. Relax in faith, knowing that all you need is right here and right now, just waiting for you to reach out and make it yours. Relax in faith, in the silence. In this sacred connection, I open myself to higher mind, divine mind, higher wisdom, which inspires me to do what is uniquely mine to do. It inspires me to step out in faith and confidence. It inspires me to make a difference. I am so grateful, Mother, Father, God, for the inspiration that moves me forward, and for the power of faith that draws me to take one step at a time, one day at a time, toward a goal unimaginable to me in days past. I am so grateful for this sacred moment, this Sabbath moment, this moment to rest in faith. And so it is.
use my back.
Thank you, joyful singers, beautiful. And I have to tell you all a little background to what's happening here today. I was going to speak on faith weeks ago. And for a series of things that were unfolding in my life and the life of our spiritual community, that topic kept getting pushed out and out and out. In the meantime, the joyful singers were planning on singing 2 weeks from now. But because they were getting so good so fast, they decided to move their performance for you up a couple weeks. Now, they didn't know I was speaking about faith, and I didn't know they were singing about faith. But don't you love the synchronicity, divine order? And that's what happens when we listen to that inner guidance. Even though it doesn't make logical sense to us, when we listen to that inner guidance, when we follow it, things just come together in a synchronous way that we would never have imagined on our own. So I believe we're on track. We've been exploring the 12 powers, and typically in the unity tradition, when you study these 12 powers, you start with faith. But for some reason, the way life has unfolded, we're ending on the power of faith, kind of bringing it all together. And we've been talking about these 12 powers for 3 months. That's 3 months of power, 3 months of empowering you. And that's what the 12 powers are all about. It's about empowerment, empowering you. We all have all 12 of these powers within us. Life, zeal, understanding, and on, including faith. We have it all. Our challenge, our call, our invitation is to connect with these 12 powers that are inside of us and develop them and use them effectively to create the life that we want and to bless people around us. The 12 powers are your birthright. We can apply them to our personal needs and desires, but they are much more powerful when we hook up any or all of those powers to spiritual inspiration. Then we can use them in a balanced and coordinated way according to spiritual principles. The really exciting thing about the 12 powers is they can be used to our benefit. The downside is we can use those same 12 powers to shoot ourselves in the foot. So what we want to do is learn to use those powers in positive, uplifting ways that bless us and that bring the blessings that we are into greater expression in our world. So what is this thing called faith? You know, it's not magical thinking. It's not wishful thinking. It's much more solid, much more tangible than that. And you already have all the faith you need. And if you don't feel like you have enough faith, it's simply a little red flag saying, you need to learn to use your faith. Now, Webster defines faith as complete trust or confidence in someone or something. Charles Fillmore, Unity co-founder, describes faith as a deep inner knowing that what we seek is already ours for the taking. Did you hear that? What we seek is already ours. It exists. And we just need to draw it into our experience, into our life. Fillmore goes on to explain that faith is the power to shape the energy of the universe and to matter, to make our dreams come true, quite literally. He also tells us faith is the power to do what seems to be impossible. So how many of you are up for doing something impossible this morning? All right. Now, a lot of times people talk about having faith in God, but that's not where it belongs. We don't need faith in God, we need the faith of God. The faith of God to create that absolute, focused, step-by-step forward movement made with confidence and sure knowing. That is spiritually grounded faith. And we are told that the power of faith, in fact, all 12 powers, seem to be centered at various locations in our physical bodies. The power of faith is located in the pineal or pineal gland. Now, if you take your finger and put it right on top of your head, like you're going to do a spiffy little pirouette, and go down, roughly an inch, that's where the pineal gland resides. If you know your anatomy at all, you know that the pineal gland is considered the master gland of the body. In other words, it tells all the other glands what to do and when to do it. So it's a real powerful part of our physical anatomy. Interestingly, the pineal gland aligns perfectly in your physiology and mine with what we know of as the crown chakra. And if you've studied energy from a Eastern perspective, you know that the crown chakra at the very top of our head is where we open up energetically to divine inspiration. Coincidence? I think not. The power of faith is about tapping into higher thinking through our crown chakra and then listening to what we're told and following what we're called to do. You know, faith is more than just believing. It cooperates with spiritual law. And we exercise our power of faith most effectively when we exercise it from a place of deep spiritual consciousness. That reminds us to spend time daily in prayer and meditation, connecting with that higher part of our being. Every time we do, we connect with the power of faith. Faith is not an intellectual process that's based on reasoning. It doesn't compare, it doesn't analyze, it doesn't draw conclusions from known premises. It doesn't take appearances into consideration, and it is not biased by precedent. Oh man, that's going to mess up our Western thinking big time, isn't it? Oh, we got to think it through, we got to analyze it, we got to cross-reference it, we got to lay out our spreadsheets, we got to figure out how everything works. That's not faith. Faith thinking is done when we connect with the truth of who we are. As we feed our thinking faculty with images generated by the faith center. Those aren't images that come from our intellect. Those are images and ideas that come as we are inspired by all that is divine, by that universal intelligence, and draw it into ourselves. Faith focuses without question. That's a tricky part, isn't it? Without question. Faith focuses without question on ideas that come from the source of all wisdom. And faith follows through on those ideas. If you want to build your faith, what you need to do is deny any thoughts of doubt or fear and affirm your commitment to following that divine inspiration from your higher self. Faith busters, well, those are negative thoughts, doubts, fears, anger, resentment, resistance, all of those attitudes stop faith cold. So what we want to do is, if we have doubts and fears, or if we got anger and resentment, acknowledge it, bless it, and let it go. So that you can move forward with confidence and with faith to create the life that you want. For when we're centered in harmonizing love and living from it, faith can work in us and through us unhindered. So we're going to talk about walking on water faith. Everybody got their water shoes on today? You know, there's so many examples in the Bible of faith. In the Old Testament, we have Noah, who builds an ark in the middle of the desert. Boy, did that take faith? In the New Testament, we have a Roman centurion approaching Yeshua, Jesus the Christ, asking for healing in absentia for his lover, and faith healed his lover. We have a woman that reaches out to Yeshua thinking, if I can only touch the hem of his robe, I'll be healed. She was. That's faith. And then we have Peter. Peter's the disciple who represents for you and me in the 12 powers the power of faith. Anybody know what the name Peter means? Rock. Peter, faith, rock solid. No doubt. It's right there. And interestingly, before Peter was called to be a disciple, he was known as Simon. Metaphysically, Simon means listening. So Peter went metaphysically from a place of listening, getting that divine inspiration, to a place of rock-solid faith. Well, it was a process for him, and it's a process for you and me too. So let's look at his process of developing faith. There's a story in the New Testament about Yeshua walking on water and Peter wanting to go along for a little stroll with him. And as the story is laid out in 3 of the Gospels, what we discovered is that this occurrence happens after that fabulous demonstration of Yeshua feeding the 5,000. He's been teaching and preaching and feeding people for hours. And Yeshua's tired, and the disciples are exhausted, and the people that have been listening to him are far from home. So Yeshua concludes his work with them, and he sends the throngs away. And he tells his disciples, and they're sitting here on the shore of the Lake of Galilee, he tells his disciples, get a boat and go across the lake. I'll meet you on the other side in a while, because I'm going to go up on this mountain to pray and meditate. For you metaphysicians, I know you've already caught it. Yeshua going up to the mountain, going up on a hill. He is literally as well as physically going to a higher place of thinking. That's where we connect with those higher ideas. That's where we relax and get refreshed and restored. And that's where those divine images that we can follow in faith come through to us. And that's what Yeshua did. He went to a higher place as he sent his disciples to cross the Sea of Galilee with the intention of meeting them a little bit later. Sea of Galilee is a fairly substantial lake. Now, if you're familiar with Lake Pepin down on the Mississippi River, that's about 40 square miles of surface area. Sea of Galilee is about 64 miles of surface area. So if we added to Lake Pepin, Prior Lake, that's another 20 miles, those two lakes together would be somewhat smaller than the Sea of Galilee. But at least you get an idea. We're talking about a formidable body of water. Now that's where the disciples were, in a boat on this sizable lake, crossing it with the intention of meeting Yeshua eventually on the other side. And a bit of a storm blows up. There's wind and wave, and the disciples are falling asleep, rocking in the boat as they cross the Sea of Galilee. And somewhere in the early dawn hours, 4 or 5 a.m., they look up. They're out in the middle of the lake, and they see a figure walking toward them, walking on the water, right at them. Well, they're terrified. They think they're seeing a ghost or something equally inexplainable and frightening. And as this figure draws close to them, they realize it's Yeshua. It's their teacher, it's their way shower, walking on the water. And Peter, being the strong one, says, if it's you, Lord, tell me to come to you. He's kind of testing the water quite literally as well as figuratively. He's not quite sure who he's seeing out there. But Yeshua replies, come. Just imagine this. Peter in this little boat with 11 of his good buds out in the middle of the lake at the crack of dawn, and it's kind of blustery out there. And he steps out of the boat with nothing but water under his feet. And he takes a step toward Yeshua, who's standing there waiting, saying, "Come." And he takes another step, and now he's free of the boat. It's still fully above the surface of the water, having stepped out in faith. Then something happens. Peter starts to notice this wave coming in from that direction and realizes the wind is blowing. Doubts and fears, all of that intellect starts playing. And I'm sure what's going through his mind is, oh my gosh, what have I done? I'm going to drown. That wave's going to roll right over me, and that's the end of Peter. His doubts and fears caused him to begin sinking. And he reached out to Yeshua and said, "Save me. Save me." Can you imagine witnessing that scene? Can you imagine watching it unfold? I have to tell you, I'd be one of the ones sitting in the boat, holding my breath, hoping against hope that my buddy Peter was going to come back and be not too much worse for the wear. We can learn 7 things from Peter's experience of walking on water. The first thing we can learn is that we need to look to the Christ. Yeshua, remember, for us metaphysicians, represents that God in us, that higher way of being and thinking. It's not Jesus Christ, it's Yeshua the Christ. And we recognize in unity the Christ is that divine expression that's in each and every one of us. We need to look to that Christ presence. Even when the storm is blowing around us, even when the wind's blowing and the waves are rising, we need to keep our eye firmly focused on that Christ presence. The problems only emerge when we lose our focus. The principle is clear, especially when life is tumultuous. Look to the Christ. Look to that God presence in you and all around you, and draw your faith from that. The question we have to ask ourselves is, how do I look to the Christ, to my higher being? What practice, what process do I have to maintain that connection? And how am I at maintaining that focus? The second thing we can learn from Peter walking on water is when you are divinely inspired as a result of your spiritual work, obey it. Yeshua told Peter to come to him across the water, and even though from a human perspective it didn't make much sense, Peter did what Spirit was telling him to do. And this is what obedience looks like. Doing what our higher awareness directs, regardless of how it might look in the linear world around us. Is there an area in your life where you're being inspired to act, but aren't yet following through? The third thing we can learn from Peter is simply to take a step and then take the next step. Peter took one step to get out of the boat and onto the water, and he was doing just fine until he got distracted and lost sight of his next step. In your journey of faith, in creating the life that you desire, what's the next step that you're being inspired to take? Are you stepping out in faith, or are you getting distracted by circumstances? point number 4. Faith unleashes what we would call, from our human perspective, the supernatural. Fillmore, remember, calls it the power to shape energy into matter, the power to do what seems to be impossible. Peter didn't experience the supernatural power that allowed him to walk on water until he trusted it, as evidenced by that very first step he took. Are you engaging faith one step at a time? Every little step we take in faith that leads us forward builds our faith for the next step. The 5th thing we can learn from Peter is that a little bit of faith is a whole lot better than no faith. The results of Peter's little bit of faith is that he began to realize he could express even greater, more sustained faith. Think for a moment in your life, when have you been divinely inspired to step out in faith in some way in your life? And you took one little step or 2 little steps in the direction that you were inspired to take. Those steps worked well. And then you were inspired to take a 3rd step and a 4th step. That's how we build faith. One step at a time. And our experience from following divine guidance each step of the way builds our faith and helps us move forward. We prove our faith and rebuild it by taking action. Point number 6. Fear will sink you. Fear will sink you. Peter learned that real quickly, didn't he? When Peter had faith, when he had his eyes on Yeshua, on his higher vision, on that God presence that Yeshua represented to him, he walked on water. Easy peasy, piece of cake. When he had fear, he sank. And the same is true for us. What fear is holding you back? Even if you've stepped out in faith and made some good progress in the direction you're going, what fear is sinking you? Is there a fear that's gripping and controlling your decision making, your forward progress? And if you discover there is a fear, it's okay, you're human, you're allowed to have fear. Acknowledge it, but then shift your focus back to that higher power, back to that spiritual guidance that you've received that called you out of the boat, that called you to walk on water. Point number 7. You know, Peter's out there walking on water, gingerly exercising his faith. In the meantime, we got 11 more fellas sitting back in the boat doing nothing, making no effort other than to simply get through the next few minutes. So often, Peter gets criticized for losing his faith and sinking. But remember, he was the only one of the 12 that was willing to get out of the boat. His willingness to move beyond where he sat demonstrated a faith far more powerful than that of his companions. Here again, the lesson is, do something. Take action. Step out in faith, because sitting in that boat will get you nowhere. What steps of faith are you taking? I have no doubt that Peter was forever changed by his experience of walking on water. He stepped out of fear and onto a plane where he was kept afloat by the power of faith. And in so doing, despite his faltering steps, he moved closer than he'd ever been before to his greater self. There's a story about an old Scotsman that kind of summarizes this for us. This old Scot is operating a small rowboat company. He transports people from one side of the loch to the other in Scotland. One day a passenger shows up and needs to get to the other side, so he hires the Scotsman. And as they're crossing the loch, the passenger notices that on one of the oars is the word faith, and on the other oar is the word works. Well, being of curious nature, the passenger said, well, what are these markings on your oars all about? And the crusty old Scotsman says, I'll show you. And he puts the oar marked works inside the boat and starts rowing with just the oar marked faith. And the harder he rows, the more they go around and round in circles. And then he pulls in the faith oar and puts out the works oar and does the same thing, and rows like crazy with the works oar and goes around in circles, the other direction, but he's still going in circles. And then he takes both oars, puts faith and works together, and they quickly and easily cross that Scottish loch. You see, said the old Scotsman, it works in life just like it does in the boat. Faith and works work together. You need both, or you'll just be going around in circles. So to develop faith, well, like all spiritual ideas, it involves disciplined practice. We center ourselves in our oneness, within our connection with that higher power, with that universal intelligence, with that Christ presence. And as we do that, we know ourselves as divine creations of that intelligence with exquisite capabilities, all of these 12 powers and so much more. And we sit in that space until we know that we know that we know, this is who I am. And then in the process of developing faith, if we discover that we have angry or negative ideas, maybe we have a need to forgive someone, we do that work so that we can center ourselves in harmonizing peace and love. And in our time of prayer and meditation, we open ourselves to higher direction. My suggestion, and this is really hard for those of us who are human beings, is when you go into meditation with the goal, set your goal aside. Set your agenda aside. And simply say, okay, here I am, Spirit. What you got for me? And listen. Because you might discover that Spirit's leading you to do what you already think you're going to be doing anyway, or Spirit might have an inspired vision for you that's beyond what you've been imagining. So open yourself to that possibility. Deny any doubt and fear, and affirm whatever divine idea it is that comes to your mind. And then step out in faith. One step at a time. You don't need to know the whole game plan. You just need to know the first step. So take that first step, knowing it will lead you forward to where you need to be. Take the steps you're inspired to take. Doubt sees the obstacles. Faith sees the way. Doubt sees the darkest night. Faith sees the day. Doubt dreads to take a step. Faith soars on high. Doubt questions, who believes? Faith answers, I. So now that you are masters of the power of faith, let's join once more in our affirmation for the day. Together, I claim my power of faith As I perceive spiritually inspired ideas, what seems to be impossible becomes possible. And I have faith that you can do it.